Home Trails podcast presented by me, Ultra Running Sam. Now, this podcast is part of the Home Trails media entity that encompasses our Home Trails documentaries. You may have seen them on YouTube, so where we interview famous ultra runners from around the world and in the UK at the moment. We film them on the trail and in the home, obviously, Home Trails. Get those insights into their training, big races they've done, and then just their background information. Try and dig a bit deeper into what motivates them to go and do these amazing things that they do. Also, part of Home Trails is new for this year is our live podcast coming from big races. You may have seen us at the Spine Race in January. We were there doing our thing all week. Later on in the summer, we will be at the Lap in the Lake District, and then keep your eyes peeled for other races where we'll be popping up and doing media coverage for some big races, hopefully. So obviously we have a podcast now, so we'll keep doing this every week, keep churning out the podcasts with famous runners and people in the industry, anyone that we can get on that we feel that you might be interested in related to trail running and ultra running. So on with our guest. Okay, so welcome to the Home Trails podcast with me, your host, Ultra Running Sam. So before we go into the interview with Luke, just a quick advert as promised for Fiona Pascal. So if you're a regular listener, you'll have obviously heard our interview last week where she talked about Chianti and getting a golden ticket to Western State. We had a chat about all things running related, but obviously we had a chat about a new project, business project, which is trail retreats. So as promised, here's the advert that we talked about. So obviously, if you are looking for a trail retreat, if you want to go away for a weekend of trail running, then this is the thing for you. So obviously, we've got Fee has given us a 20% discount on all retreats for this year. So the discount code that you want to use is UltraSam20, and that will get you 20% off all trail retreats over this year. Right, so what do you get from trail retreats? Right, well, I'm going to read just straight from the website. So if you haven't had a look already, so Fee says to unplug from the daily grind and reset your soul in the wild hills and valleys. Retreat to our secluded natural haven to nourish your mind and body. Sounds good so far. Benefit from Pilates strength and stretch sessions designed to complement your training. Stay in our cozy boutique cabins, offering a quirky and comfortable retreat after a day on the trails. Indulge in a hearty home-cooked meals and mountains of home-baked snacks, thoughtfully crafted to fuel your performance and aid recovery. Sit back and enjoy inspiring talks and workshops led by Fiona Pascal of Team GB and Solomon UK, and a variety of other athletes and experts. So yeah, on the website you'll see that they're listed there, so that the weekends that are upcoming with speakers and guests. So intro to trail running with Fiona herself, that's the 25th to the 28th of April 2025. Then Gary House, everyone loves Gary House. He will be doing his thing on the 23rd to the 26th of May. So you can have a weekend listening to Gary talk all things coaching and creator type stuff and run with him. And then the women's weekend with Sophie Power, which is the 6th to the 9th of June. Oh, and then finally, for July, of the ones that are listed so far, we have Beth herself, so Beth Pascal. So obviously, if you want to learn from Beth and glean a bit of knowledge from her with her Western States win back a few years ago, it'd be great to see her running again, actually, because I know she does a lot of biking, but it's obviously she knows what she's doing with running, so that would be a great weekend to go and get some expert knowledge, as will the rest of the weekends that she's got planned. So use that code then, UltraSam20, to get 20% off trail retreats for this year. Okay, advert done. On with this week's guest. Yes, we are recording again. So welcome to the newly renamed Home Trails podcast with your loving host, Ultra Running Sam. So a few eagle-eyed listeners and watchers have noticed that I've slightly changed the format of the podcast. But most people thought it was called the Home Trails Podcast anyway. So I don't know what I'm messing about at. But anyway, enough of that. Well, welcome to the podcast, Luke Grenfell-Shaw.
It's wonderful to be here, Sam. So thanks for having me.
That's good. We made it happen, didn't we, mate? We made it happen finally.
It's been a long time coming, but I believe it's worth waiting for. I know everyone's been waiting for this episode as well, since December. So
Yeah, is that what it was? Was it December? Was it when we
I think
first?
it was Chiang Mai. It was after Chiang Mai we were going to have a chat, and then
Yes.
I bailed on you. I was ill.
You were ill, yeah.
Yeah, and
Then I went to the spine.
you went to the spine.
Yeah.
And then now we're here.
Now we're here. Finally, we've made it happen. Three months later, we're here. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry,
Perfect.
mate. Sorry, mate. Well, like you say, all good things come to those who wait, like the old ketchup advert.
But it's like
So it,
ultra running, isn't it? Like you have to be in it for the long haul. And maybe this is actually part of your kind of selection process of like which guys and girls you have on your podcast. Who's committed? Who's still going
yeah,
to be here
yeah,
in 3 months'
exactly.
time?
Yeah, that
So,
is true, actually. Yeah, because although I don't think I've had anyone. I think it's normally been me. If it's normally been me, and then sometimes I'll say to somebody, I think I said this to you, like remind me in a couple of weeks, to like for us to get our heads together and do it. And then some people that I've said remind me in a couple of weeks just never got back to me. And then like 6 months later, I'm like, I'm sure I should have done a podcast with that person, and it never happened. So they obviously didn't want it as badly as you.
I'm just desperate for the podcasts.
Right. Luke, I know this is going to be like a big question for you. So if feel free to sort of take as long as you like with this question. And if you've heard any of the podcasts before, when I interview somebody new for the first time, I ask the superhero question. So all superheroes have an origin story, how they got to be who they are. So, what is your superhero origin story, Luke? How did you sort of get to be the guy that, we're seeing all over social media, going to all these races and doing amazing things? I want you to sort of go back as far as you like and tell, as much detail as you want to sort of share because you've got an amazing backstory, and I think people definitely need to hear it.
Well, I think first off, I'd say I'm not a superhero or superhuman. Like I'm very much like I guess a guy who's put one foot in front of the other. Really, I think for the last like 17 or 18 years, which has taken me to this point of, now being a professional ultra trail runner, which is kind of like it's kind of still in some ways unbelievable, particularly when I look back to like 13 or 14-year-old Luke. And uh I think it's really important to stress, like at least for me, this has been a long time coming, and it has not happened overnight. And I'm not some supremely talented guy, but I have stuck at running for a long time because I've enjoyed it. But to go back, I think at least in terms of this story with trail running, I would now look back and say that my roots were that my parents took me and my brother orienteering
Mm.
when we were little. Our kind of Sunday activity was going to the Forest of Dean or I don't know, the Quantock Hills and doing an orienteering event, which at the time felt like some sort of purgatory. For me, it was just like my recollections of it are like brambles, being damp, getting lost,
Like
and then
Barclay.
exactly. Yeah, Barkley, light, 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 light. Yeah, I think it was basically the Barkley is how it felt, but for like 6-year-old me. And I remember, Mum, bless her, would like make sandwiches for us, and I would always have like cheese and cucumber sandwiches, and I would eat them in the car, and I just always remember the cucumber being limp. Because it had just been like waiting in the cold car for several hours. I finished my course. Mum and dad are still out on their course, and I'm having these like limp cucumber sandwiches. But I mean, bless mum, like she made the sandwiches a hell of a lot more than I did. So thank you, mum. Um, but that's kind of it. Really did, I think, looking back, it paved the way for what came later. Um, and like, our family holidays were active. We one year we went like cycled and walked across the Hadrian's Wall. Another year we cycled down most of the Rhone Valley, the Rhone River.
Wow.
Um, which, sounds idyllic, but I think for me at the time there were high points, but most of it was just like boot camp, like 11-year-old Luke just being like, my goodness, this is hard work. When will this end? Um, but it has over time built the suffer gene. Um, then, at school I got into cross-country running, a little bit of road running. I didn't have very much speed. I had some much, much, much more talented friends. Um, and then I started to have a bit of success when I got into triathlon at age 17. I sort of did duathlon, triathlon. I think that's built some of my strength that I've got over years. Um, and yeah, and I also, because I didn't have to run so fast and being a decent biker, that kind of was starting to bring me onto the podium of these kind of local races and, over university, even some like national races. But as you know, Sam, this story all takes a completely different turn when I'm turned 24 years old. Um, and at 24, this should have been like my peak time of my life, like peak fitness, peak meeting new people, peak experiences, peak health, all of this. Um, and I was out actually in Siberia. I was in Russia back in 2018 because I wanted to get my Russian better. So I was working as an English teacher. But for months, I'd had this like aching shoulder. My left shoulder had been aching and aching away. And I'd ignored it because, we're athletes, right? Of course, we
Yeah.
get aches and niggles and stuff. And, if you stop training every time you got a niggle, you'd never exercise. So, anyway, like I very successfully ignore this ache in my shoulder for, I don't know, getting on for 4, 5, 6 months. But, it doesn't go away. And like my shoulder feels a bit funny. But, I convince myself everything's fine. I do actually my first ever ultra trail race in the Ural Mountains in Siberia. I do 50 kilometers, finish out sprinted by some Russian dude who'd done a 63-minute half marathon. So I was like, God, I'm doing so great. And then on the bus back, I'm like, but my shoulder's still aching. So I then go and see the doctor. And I kind of go into the doctor's room and I say, look, and I'm feeling a bit foolish at this point because I'm like, I think my shoulder's aching a bit. Like, um, I'm sure it's nothing, but like, can you just have a look? So the doctor's like, okay, take off your shirt and turn around. So I turn around and she like looks at me and she's like, Bоже mой, which means, oh my God. And then I realized like something was really wrong. Um, the next like 48 hours were just crazy. I came back to the UK. I had biopsy tests, and the long story short is I had cancer. That my left shoulder had a huge tumor, probably the size of a mango, a pineapple beneath my
Wow.
left shoulder blade. And I like that's bad enough, but then the doctor in Bristol was saying, "But there's also something with your lungs. There's a problem with your lungs." And I didn't really understand what he was saying. And I realized I had like 13 lung metastases as well. So it had spread to my lungs as well. And it was a very rare, very aggressive uh, cancer that the doctors um, basically said, like chemotherapy might buy you some time. And we're not even sure it's going to be effective, but like we'll give you some chemo and we'll see what happens. So basically, at 24 years old, I was told like you're basically,
Death sentence.
yeah, you're gonna die. It was They didn't say it in as many words, and like to be fair, they're very professional. They know that they can't
Mm.
say anything for certain. But they were basically like, mate, you're screwed. So that is where my life, which up to that point had gone on like very kind of normal path, um, suddenly like is totally derailed. So, I go into hospital. No, I don't just go into hospital. Like I go home and I cry into the sofa. I go home and like, my whole world has fallen apart. I felt it like, disintegrating because like
Mm.
everything that I kind of knew to be true had just been proved to be like totally false, I suppose. And like totally like, because like in life we live in this way of like if you do something, you get a certain outcome. If like as runners, if you train hard, you see that improvement, you get fitter. Like it's that simple. And yet I was like the fittest, the healthiest person of any of my friends. And somehow I'd been the one who'd ended up with cancer. So it was like the rule book of life had just been like,
Mm.
yeah,
Torn up. Mm.
thrown out. Um, but on the day that I was diagnosed, my dad gave me some advice. He was like, well, first of all, he was like, Luke, let's just go for a run. You'll feel better if you go for a run. So like I was not in the mood, but he sort of bribed me with a cup of tea, and then we went out together. And we were running, we ran across the downs in Bristol and looked out across the suspension bridge. And there he was like, look, Luke, as your dad, like losing one of my sons is like the worst thing I can imagine. But there's nothing I can do about it. You have cancer. I can't stop the fact that you have cancer, and there's nothing you can do about it. But what you do have a choice over is how you spend the next 3 months, the next 6 months. Like, you know, you can't control whether the chemotherapy is going to be effective. But like, what are you going to do in this time that you do have? And I was so it would be so easy to be angry and resentful and just furious at life for what had happened. But I kind of realized if I did that, then my last months alive would just basically be miserable months.
Mm.
And so what I tried to do, and it wasn't an overnight thing, and I made many mistakes and I had many kind of quote unquote relapses where I was just depressed. But like what I tried to do was say, well, what can I do to make this the best time possible? Okay, like should we go to the theater as a family? I want to spend time with my friends. Like, let's have a picnic, even within the context of treatment. But then the other bit of me was like thinking, well, okay, let's just say 1% of people survive in my situation. What can I do to give myself the best chance of being in that 1%? Not because it's going to guarantee me being alive, but just because that's like the only positive way I can sort of think about framing this. And for me, one of the absolute key things was exercise. I thought exercise and diet, and then I think I had amazing support from my parents and from my friends. Um, and so as I was going through treatment, pretty much every day I would, I'd walk for an hour. I was hooked up to a drip for 20 hours out of every 24, but when I was off it, I would walk for an hour around Bristol Harbour side, and I would pedal my bike on the turbo, um, for I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour, most days. Not hard. I was just turning the pedals. Um, and because it's a running podcast, it's relevant to say that, two-thirds of the way through my treatment after 4 rounds of chemotherapy, I entered the Bristol half marathon. I think, earlier in the summer I'd entered it with my parents, and they were kind of like, "Oh, we're gonna still do it. Like, do you want to still do it?" And I was like, "Well, I might as well still do it." Like, okay, I'd like lost my hair and I had my eyebrows, but I was like, well, why not? I'll give it a go. Um, yeah, and I ended up completing it and actually ended up running it in 80 minutes.
No way.
And then the next day, I went in and started my fifth round of chemotherapy.
Wow. That's mental.
I could go on, Sam, but I'm very aware that I've just spoken for about the last 10 minutes
Yeah,
non-stop. So
no.
we might want to pause or, sort of pick up on stuff,
I'll give
and
you.
I can
I'll
just
give.
keep
Yeah,
on. I can
I'll
keep the
give.
lecture going. So
I'll give you a break. I appreciate you sort of laying it all out there because and I obviously knew your backstory and stuff, and obviously some people know it, but not everybody knows it. So I think sort of understanding what you've been through, kind of for people to sort of understand what kind of person you are now, and do you feel like what you went through with cancer is sort of did it has it sort of galvanized you as a person, or has it changed you, or has it just sort of made you realize who you are? Because at 24, trying to think, what was I doing at 24? I was still pretty wild at 24. Met my wife. I probably started to settle down a little bit, but you're not really thinking about serious things in life, are you? Like,
yeah.
like your life potentially ending. So was it obviously it was like it must have been like obviously it was a shock. But do you feel like it has made you the person that you are now, or did it just sort of galvanize the person you already were?
I think probably some of the traits, probably most of the traits were um kind of lying latent or there to a much lesser degree. But I think really fundamentally it changed me as a person. But I think the way it changed me most of all is that I was really given this very stark series of choices of what do I want to do with my time? Like, I'm not going to get any more time. So, what is the thing that I really want to do with my life? Screw the ambition of career plans and, I don't know, getting a well-paid job or buying a house. I mean, like, what's the point of trying to work towards buying a house because I'm going to be dead? There's literally no point. So like, what do I actually really want to do with my time? And I think that's probably been the guiding force of my life since. Um, as soon as I finished my treatment and I had chemo, radiotherapy, and surgery, I then cycled on a tandem from Bristol to Beijing. And we've just finished a documentary, A Life in Tandem. We filmed it, and that came out at Kendall. And after that, I got into trail running. But that's all been basically informed and guided by thinking, well, what do I really want to do with my life right now?
How how what what I'm just trying to get my head around like what did like your specialists and stuff, what was their opinions on like what you were doing, like because I know plenty of people that have had cancer, and I know not sure any of them were running an 80-minute half marathon, that's for sure. Like what were the doctors saying to you when you were doing all of this?
So I think there were a couple of surprises. Well, first of all, I was surprised. On that day I was diagnosed, I remember speaking to the medical team there, and I was like, guys, what can I do? Like to help myself? Like, should I be exercising? Should I be looking at my diet? And I was amazed that they were just like, nah, like, chill. Do what you want. Like if you want a brownie, have a brownie. And I think, it's really understandable. I've just been given this horrible news. They're not going to be like, no, you should also do a 10K run today. Um, but I couldn't believe it because I was like, I know, and I'm sure you know as well, like everyone knows listening to this, like the power of going for a run in terms of like boosting your mood,
Mm,
making you feel better. Your body, obviously, it's better for your body. Um, so my first surprise was like, surprised they didn't say, yeah, it's really important to exercise.
mm,
I ignored them, and exercised my way through. And there came this moment where my consultant comes into my hospital room, sees me pedaling on the bike. He practically goes white, like leaves the room quite quickly. And he comes back a bit later and he's like, right, I've done some research um, on the impact of exercise, and although there are basically no studies of your particular type of cancer because it's so rare, like I found a study in mice, and it seems like the mice who exercised actually did better. So, as long as you're able to kind of, tolerate the exercise, tolerate the chemotherapy, you're kind of good to do it. Um, and,
It's
and
just like it's like a green light, isn't it, for people like us, isn't it? Like if a doctor says, well, if it's not really doing, I can't really see any reason why you couldn't, then you just grab hold of that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I think it's so I'm patron of Move Against Cancer, this absolutely fantastic charity that helps people with cancer move. It's in the name. And one of the things they do in addition to like the 5K Your Way program and like an 8-week online kind of exercise program is, trying to give and get change the discourse and how people talk about exercising, cancer, people with cancer, how they exercise, and like saying that no, it's really important, it's really beneficial. And so hopefully slowly, like we can start to change this across the UK. But I think anyone like listening to this who knows someone who's going through, sort of chemotherapy or who's got cancer, like you need to do it within the limits of your body, but like it can be hugely, hugely beneficial. And so like definitely I would always be like pushing my consultant on it and also looking at the resources on Move Against Cancer website because
Mm.
they're pretty good.
Do you, do you feel like there's a connection there with sort of your body sort of knowing how, when you're sort of making your body suffering with, I'm trying to think how to word this, when your body is used to going through hard things and sort of recovering from it, do you think it was like your body was sort of prepared to recover from cancer because of the way that you sort of lived your life anyway, that it would sort of rebuild, try to sort of fight it off and rebuild what was there?
It's a great question, Sam. I don't think in any conscious way, that my body sort of knew, okay, like you've been on this training cycle, responding from chemotherapy is just like training. I've never thought about it like that. Maybe. But I would say the mindset is probably, the training that just you have to just endure, right? Long training sessions you have to endure. And kind of chemotherapy, I think, is also something you just have to kind of sit with. It's not going anywhere
Mm.
until you finish the course and then you can feel a bit better. Um, it's quite an interesting idea though, of like, yeah, whether your body is kind of more used to responding to that.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know if any research has been done on it. But I definitely think just exercising whilst you're on chemo allows you to respond better,
Yeah.
like stay stronger, get
Mm.
well quicker afterwards,
Mm. Yeah.
within reason, within
It's
reason.
almost like prehab, isn't it, for when people sort of do like a sessions when they before they have a surgery, they're doing things to strengthen themselves up so they can better cope with. Yeah, so you can understand it from that point of view. Yeah. Um, just go back to because we kind of like brushed over Bristol to Beijing. Just to sort of tell the listeners exactly what you did to raise money.
Yeah, so that was yeah, I'll just like put 2.5 years of my life into one sentence. No, so basically, I talked about like short-term horizons. My dream when I finished chemotherapy, I had this freedom. And when I finished treatment, I really didn't know how long I had. And I certainly did not expect to be alive right now. When I finished treatment, I thought, okay, well, really, I was thinking, my next scan is in 3 months.
Mm,
I've probably got 3 months. And then after that, I'll have my next scan. I've got another 3 months. But I really wasn't thinking in terms of more than 3 to 6 months. But I was like, doesn't matter how long I have. My dream is to cycle around the world. I really want to see as many places as possible. And I think a bike is a wonderful way of doing that. You can cover a lot of ground, and obviously it's physically active. But I also wanted to share that journey with other people. That was really important for me for a few reasons. Um, One of those reasons was during my treatment, I discovered I really like my friends, and like I wanted to share this expedition with my friends, and it makes it easier to do it on a tandem because I'm not very patient, and people bringing out their own bikes, and it's just like there's a backseat. Um, the second reason was I also kind of wanted to show not just what I could do with cancer, have an adventure and be active, but I thought that that message is going to be much more powerful if I can get other people who've also had cancer, and I call them can livers, you can live with cancer, um, get other can livers to join me, because then it becomes much more credible. It's like, it's not just me.
Mm,
Here are these other people who also had cancer who are cycling in Kazakhstan with me,
mm,
or, across India. And then there's a third reason, and I think you'll probably know this, Sam, but many listeners probably won't unless they're quite familiar with my backstory. But the third reason I really wanted to do this on a tandem was because like originally I'd hoped to do this with my brother John, who last featured eating cucumber sandwiches with me and orienteering. Um, and the other incredibly sad thing that happened in 2018 was whilst I had my first round of chemotherapy, John was up in the Lake District with some friends running, and he fell and he died. And so that trip that I'd have loved to have shared with John, I could no longer share with him, but like doing it on a tandem and sharing it with other people, um, yeah, sort of felt like the best way possible to sort of still, I don't know, be inclusive in some way. So
mm.
yeah,
Yeah, you've been through. It's like hard to sort of quantify what you've been through. Um, but do you feel that, the more things that have got, because this is something that's, I thought with my life that, more stuff that's gone wrong with your life, the more you kind of want to live it and you just want to make, really make the most of what you've got because when you've lost people, you're fully aware, aren't you, of the fact that your moments with people could be your last. I've lost, I saw, you're going to set me off now, but I saw my dad die when I was 18 of a heart attack. My youngest sister died from a head injury in a car crash when she was 21. And then my brother died in October just gone. And he had a esophageal cancer, and he'd sort of had that for a couple of years and was fighting that. But since like being 18 and watching my dad die and then sort of my life going to pieces, I've always had this like need to sort of not to suffer, but because life can be suffering enough as it is. But I've always sort of the way I've kind of dealt with the cards that life sort of handed me is to just sort of go my own route and do the things that I want to do, and people might think that you're a bit odd for wanting to do stupid things and run ridiculously long distance races and things like that. But that was kind of my sort of coping mechanism for life. Do you feel like that's something that relates to you as well? That you just this is when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade, don't you?
yeah, man, shit, man. I mean, I didn't know that, and yeah, it sucks. I
Yeah,
mean, that's the biggest understatement of all. But like, yeah, man, you've been through the mixer.
yeah. We both have, mate.
We both have, but like, I don't know. It's yeah, it's not often. I'm like, shit, yeah, your dad, your sister, your brother. Wow. But I think you're right. Like in the, I think it I think it kind of gives a more of an urgency of life and a bit more of a like a, who the hell cares what I'm doing. Um and yeah, and I think it's yeah, you do realize those moments are really important, like the moments that we have alive, the moments that we have with like loved ones. Um, and I definitely wouldn't like to sort of say that like that somehow means that I'm sure I'm speaking for you as well. It doesn't mean like we're always grasping every moment and saying
Mm,
like, God, the roses smell brilliant every single day. Like it's with
yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like we're human. I'm human. I'm not, I definitely have the many down days or moments where you're just like, oh, meh.
Mm,
But I think on the whole, yeah, it does fundamentally change. And that is a gift. It can be a gift because it stops you sleepwalking, it stops you compromising, it forces you to prioritize. And that can lead to a much, I think, more fulfilling life.
mm. You know, with this, with the Bristol to Beijing thing then, so how did you sort of feel after doing that? Did you feel like it sort of gave you sort of some closure on stuff, or did it just ignite more of, you know, wanting to do more stuff like that?
It's complicated, Sam. In some ways, I felt quite lost afterwards because that had basically been, it had almost been
Yeah, focus.
my
Yeah.
adult, not in my adult life, but my post-cancer adult life. And that was so different to the pre-cancer adult life that like it had been my life. Essentially, it had that cycle ride had been my life. So I had to just sort of decide, well, what on earth do I do now? Also, spoiler alert, because of COVID, and I was doing it from January 1st, 2020 through to June 2022. Like that was peak pandemic years. And I
Mm,
never actually got into China because um the borders were completely and utterly closed. So I did the distance in London on the tandem when I got hundreds of people to join me doing it. So I did the distance, but symbolically I didn't have that closure either. Um and so I think afterwards, and the third thing was I was pretty burnt out. Like I'd spent a lot of time talking like I do now,
mm,
but like every day or every other day, meeting new people, and particularly through the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, like it is unbelievably intense, and particularly when you're on a tandem because people want to talk to you the whole time. Um, and as someone who at their very heart is an introvert, like I was exhausted. I was bored of telling my story. I was asking questions of other people just so I could shut up, and get them to talk, but I wasn't even interested in what they had to say. I was just like, enough, enough already. So like in so many ways, like it left me um I kind of came off the ride in a quite a sort of uncertain place, I suppose.
mm, yeah. So after that, then, when did you then decide that you were going to focus sort of solely on trail running then?
So it kind of started a few months after I finished the ride. And I was actually, I was in London. I thought I wanted to live in London, and goodness knows why. Um, and I was actually kind of borderline depressed. Like, it wasn't anything too bad. I don't want to kind of claim big depression, but like I wasn't in a good place. I wasn't happy. But I'd agreed with one of my friends who lives in America to we were gonna like have a reunion, and we decided we'd meet in Ireland, and there was a trail race there, Eco Trail Wicklow. And it was kind of coming round to this weekend, and I was almost like because I was really not feeling great, and I was just like, I'm not even sure I can like I want to race or whatever, but I was like, I'll go and meet my friend. Um, and I met her, and I was like, okay, I'll do the race. And I remember on the start line hearing, there was some like world record holder for I think the most vertical ascent in 24 hours or something, and like some guy had run for Ireland, and I was like, my goodness, like this seems some really big serious deal, and like this is me. I didn't have a single like energy gel on me. Like, I had some flapjack I'd made myself. And on the course, I was eating like gummy snakes from the aid stations. Like that's the kind of level of prepared I was. Um, but like the race went really well. I mean, like outstandingly well, like out of my mind, could better than I could ever imagined. I think I broke the course record by about an hour. I was about an hour ahead of second place. And I'd had the best day. I was like running and I was like, wow, this is cool. Like I'm in these green hills, it's sunny, my body's just moving for me, and like it just keeps going. Like I don't get tired really. Um, and it was basically after that race that the commentator Owen, who does the UTMB commentary, like he's the guy in the finish line in Chamonix, he was like, you should think about taking this further. And that's kind of where it started.
What year was that then? So
So that was um end of September 2022.
me too. So you then get into, so you got into, so what did you do in between? Because obviously in the following summer you were at CCC, weren't you? And you came eighth at CCC. So what did you do in between that then?
Oh, then I sort of and I then basically didn't do any races for the rest of that year because I was away and sort of was like, at the start of 2023, I was like, well, I kind of want to give this trail racing thing a go, but I didn't really know how. I didn't really understand what UTMB was. I didn't really understand what Golden Trail was. So I basically just tried to enter lots of different events. So I entered the Golden Trail National Series one in Ameland because that was literally the first one. And I was like, I want to find the first race that I can do. So I did that and I won that. Then was like, okay, well, UTMB is an important thing. I reckon I can do 100K. So I entered UTMB Istria. I crashed and burned because I was wearing a pair of fell shoes. And it was a very rocky course. And in fact, they were my brother's shoes, and I'd worn them for Eco Trail Wicklow, and I was like, I'm going to wear them for this
Mm.
race, like I don't need padded shoes. But basically, the lugs were bruising my foot, and I basically couldn't put any weight on my foot after 50K. So I DNF'd. Um, but that kind of like, I was learning.
Mm.
I learned that you should have gels. I learned that you should have shoes with some like padding in them. Um, and then uh, I did the Scaffold Sky race. I don't know, a month and a half later, I won that. And then 2 weeks after that, I did UTMB Mozart and 100K. And yeah, I sort of had no idea really what to expect, but we won it. Um, did another National Trail Golden Trail National Series 2 weeks after that. Won that, and then I broke. Then I didn't actually break my back, but then I got quite badly injured straight after that because I just no idea. I was just like, I don't know how much I can race. Yeah, I can race every 2 weeks. Why not? I'll give it a go. And then my body caught up with me and was like, no, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. Wow. So it's like you sort of discovered that you'd got like a superpower, um, and then just used it all the time until it sort of came back at you.
Yeah, but it wasn't a superpower in the sense of like, I think the ride actually gave me this amazing diesel engine because I'd been cycling for 4 to 6 hours
Mm.
most days for 2 years.
Mm.
So that was like pretty amazing training. So I think that's partly where it came from. And then I think so that's the physical side, but then the mental side with where I'd been in my life with
Mm.
particularly with the cancer, I was like, okay, if when it gets tough, I was like, this is a lot better than chemotherapy. Like,
Mm.
um, when you were given your diagnosis, a few years ago, like you would have been given anything to be in this much pain.
Yeah.
Like you can, okay, and it's one day. Like one day is nothing. One day of pain for eternal glory. Or the glory for the next 20 minutes or whatever. Like it's okay. And that helps put it into perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons, well, yeah, we like we said, we was going to have you on since December, but um, I remember that we needed to get it booked, and then Chianti had come round. So I was like, right, I've got to get you booked in to talk to you after Chianti because um, I've left it too long, and we need to. Well, and all else fails, we can talk about his amazing performance at Chianti. So what actually happened at Chianti?
Yeah, so that absolutely fantastic DNF. We love it. We love it. No, so actually, you know what? I have no regrets of that race. I, I've got sort of I think there are two big reasons why the result was what it was. I knew it was a super competitive race, of course. And I wanted to do everything I could to give myself the best chance of being on the podium.
Mm.
And I wasn't going to do that by playing safe. So one of the things that I did is Brooks very kindly sort of gave me a prototype shoe, which was their kind of their road Hyperion PB4, which is an amazing like road super shoe. And I put a trail sole on the bottom, and I was like, right, this is my weapon of choice.
Mm.
Um, and I hadn't really practiced in it, and I hadn't raced in it. And I think particularly on the downhills, the carbon plate really kind of springs your foot forward. But
Mm.
that meant as I was running downhill, I was also trying to kind of control the way my legs were moving,
Yeah.
not consciously, but it was using a muscle that I hadn't ever really used before. And that gave out after 60K, and I just couldn't
Mm.
pick my legs up. And like it was like shooting pains going downhill. Like every step was just agony after 60K.
Is that like would that be tibialis then? Is it that muscle, the one at the front, your tib? Is it that
I I
like your
thought
shin?
no. So it's
Right.
quads,
Oh,
uh,
and your quads.
and I think it's the rectus femoral muscle. So it's like kind of the center muscle that goes down the middle of each quad from like your hip flexor
Yeah.
right in the center. I don't know what it's
One
called.
of the
I
four.
knew what
One
it
of the
was.
four, basically.
One of the four. Um, so I think, that was a big factor. And I think the other factor just was like, really, I should have done some more hard downhill practice anyway. And I didn't do enough. Um, but that wasn't the reason I DNF. The reason was my that muscle, whatever we decided it was, it gave up and I couldn't each step was agony and it was like I could have finished the race, but I couldn't have run to the
Mm.
finish line, and and at that point it's a bit different.
Because so when I flicked the because it was an early start, wasn't it? Was it like four? Was it 4 a.m. start? That's rough, isn't it? 4 a.m. start.
Yeah, unnecessary,
Yeah, that's
not a fan.
that's like a is that like a UTMB thing so that everyone's finishing at like the peak time for viewers or something? Don't know. Just
No, don't
more
know. They're
punishment.
madness.
So obviously, like UK time, we got up here Saturday morning and put it on, and I think you were in fourth when I checked, and I was like, that's it, that's him for the day. So you top five performance, it's gonna be great, and if you can pick like any of those top three off at the in front of you, that'd be even better. And then I like went off and did something, came back and realized that you weren't there at all. So, what
Yeah.
are you okay with? So, I mean, like you've already sort of said how, you've had sort of ups and downs, performances and stuff. You've had some outstanding like wins, but you've had some not epic fails, but sort of where things haven't gone as well. Are you okay with sort of DNFing races for the right reasons then?
Oh, it's a great question, and it's something I've thought about a lot, and I think about it when I do DNF, and it's certainly not something I do lightly, um, or want to make a habit of. And I think, that can be a danger. Um, so yeah, we could really, yeah, I'd be interested to get into a discussion of this, but like, I think, say with this race, um, I didn't like DNFing, but I felt comfortable. No, I didn't feel comfortable. I thought it was probably the most pragmatic decision because I wasn't trying to prove to myself I could run 120 kilometers. Um, what I was seeing if I could do was keep up or be within touching distance of, some of the top three trail runners,
Mm.
male trail runners in the world. Um, and at the point that like it became clear I couldn't run, properly, it wasn't really able to move my body. Like, what was I going to gain from being out there? Yes, I
Mm.
could dig deep into the pain cave, and yes, I could have finished, and it would have taken me, another 8 hours, and it's a really difficult. And I think your question is so important because, like, I DNF when I was still in like probably like 15th place or something, right? So there was people going all day. So why should the elite just go and bugger off because they decide it's not their day? And I think it's such a valid question. But I think ultimately for me, like, as I say, I wasn't trying, me trying to finish the race. Yes, I could put myself in the hurt locker and do that. But one, I'd rather do that when for me it really counts.
Mm,
I have no problem putting myself in that amount of pain, but I'd rather be vying for like the top three spots when I'm doing so.
mm,
And I think the second thing is like I could have finished that, but I probably would have caused some other injury.
mm,
Um, because I wasn't going to be using my body in the way that it should be
mm,
used. And I think I'm fortunate enough for this to essentially be my job. It makes more sense for me to be able to, for me not to completely screw my body,
mm,
recover quicker, so then I can race again.
mm.
Um, but it's something that's uncomfortable. And I don't, and I think you've had Lucy. Have you spoken with Lucy Gossage on?
No, I've not had her on the. I've got her booked in for a home trails episode, but and I've spoken to her at the spine and stuff, but I haven't. Yeah, I've not had her for a podcast. She's avoided me for a while.
She, but she's absolutely wonderful. And she's a close friend, and I've got so much respect for her. She's a former 14-time Ironman
Mm.
champion, and she something she's told me, and I know about her. She's never DNF'd a race, and I'm like kind of wow. And I think Ironman is a slightly different discipline to trail running. I think it is a bit in a marathon, you still only got 40K. Whereas I'd run 75K and I still had another 50K to go. But, I think there's something to be said for the people who never like DNF. And I think, someone like Holly Page, she is absolutely as tough as nails and finishes races just because like she's going to finish it.
Mm. But,
Um,
but
yeah.
but yeah, in the same breath, you do see top elites bow out of races because, like you say, they're not having the day that they want. And it's quite easy for not for you, but for me as like a mere mortal to sort of go, that why didn't they finish the race? They should have finished the race. You got that opportunity to run that iconic race. Why aren't you finishing it? Um, but when it's your job, then it's the equivalent of me doing something in my daily work that would scupper me for the rest of the week, and I wouldn't be able to earn a living. So it's the same for you guys that when it's your job, if you yeah, why would you have to grit something out just for the sake of finishing it when you can come back and bounce back and put on a better performance at another race?
Yeah, I think particularly it's not just the gritting it out. I think for me, if there's an element of like injury or involved,
Mm,
so the Istria race I DNF'd, um, I couldn't put any weight through my right foot at the point I DNF'd, and like there was this huge bruise across the whole of my foot, like the next, well, even later that same day. Like I don't think it's a smart thing to be doing to running in that
mm,
situation. Um, with Chianti, I wasn't really able to lift my legs up. At that point, it's not smart. But like, I kind of think if it's a race that's not your day, I don't know. I might end up being hypocritical on this, but I've definitely had races say like I did Ninghai, UTMB Ninghai last October. It ended up going okay. I finished fourth in a high quality field, but there are large parts of that day where I was like feeling flogged, and I
mm,
was like, I'm not running very well. I'm getting dropped by everyone. And I managed to tough it out, and other people kind of faded a lot towards the end, so that result ended up looking quite flattering compared to where I had been. But to me, that's an example of like you're having a
mm,
rubbish day, but nothing's wrong.
mm.
You're just having a tough day at the office, and you should keep going. Um, Not that I feel it is the office either. Like I feel so lucky to run, and I wouldn't want to. It does pay my bills, but I don't like to think of it or see of it as work as such
Mm.
because it's very special to be able to do this.
Yeah, you are in a privileged position and it's nice to hear that you are grateful for it as well.
Hugely privileged. I mean, so lucky and so unexpected. As I said, when I was growing up, I was growing up with much better athletes, guys who had representing like GB or England in their, under whatever, under 15, under 17 categories. I never expected to be this guy. So for me, like, yeah, it is, and I'm aware it might not last a very long either, and that's also okay.
Yeah.
But I feel very lucky for whilst it is part of my life.
Yeah. Do you often think about how things could have been different then? So if you'd not got the cancer, what direction your life would have gone in? What have you sort of decided what you were going to do, sort of like career wise, and could you, by now would you have been sort of living in London, with a fancy job?
Yeah, I think my life could have gone down a couple of different paths. One was I could have, had a job to become a kind of consultant, sort of management consultant kind of thing. Um, and yeah, that could have taken me down one path. I was also considering like a PhD in plant science. And
Wow.
like at that age, so 23, 24, I've always been interested in travel, but more than that, like living and being part of places well beyond Europe. So like I think at that age I was always thinking more about like international development and whether that was going to be like using my skills as a consultant to somehow do something useful in the world, or as a plant scientist
Mm,
do something useful in Somalia. That was on my mind. I don't quite know. Yeah, but I don't think I would have become a professional athlete. I think that would be quite unlikely.
mm, yeah. Yeah, but sliding doors, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? Yeah, life. Never really dwell on the what could have been, and just yeah, it's just being, like you say, being grateful for the life that you've got now and the things that you can do. What's your sort of plan going forward then? Like for the rest of this year, how did Chianti sort of fit into your plan for what you were going to do this year, and has that changed now and different focuses?
Yeah, so I think, really pretty much immediately my lack of success at Chianti was like very much like, right, I want to race again as soon as possible. I can do better than this. Like, let's get back on it. So I'm hopefully gonna do at least one race. We'll probably do a 50K race out in China. Then I'm going to do 50K at UTMB Snowdonia and then Lavaredo 80. I was always going to do Lavaredo, but I'm now wanting to kind of crack these 50Ks in first and just like, I just want to race. I just want to get back there. I just want to see what I can do. Um, and yeah, hopefully those will kind of gear me up for Lavaredo quite well. We'll see.
What's your sort of speciality distance and what are you most comfortable with?
I'd say like 100K seems to be my sweet spot. But I don't think I've yet sort of had a particularly good 50K at the UTMB level. So I'm kind of, I feel like I'm probably not going to be quite as suited to 50, but I think I can do a better job than when I was half injured at, what was it? Canyons 50.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
yeah. So if things had gone well at Chianti and things were different and you were in a podium position and you would have ended up with one of the golden tickets, is that something that would you have considered taking that to go to Western States?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad you said yeah, because like Fee Pascal was like, well, I still haven't decided yet, and I'm like, come on, you've got to go to Western States.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's entitled to, got their own priorities and their own reasons. But I, I think it'd be super special to do it, and it'd be quite nice to do that. It's quite a runnable course, and I think that would quite suit me. Um, and yeah, I think it's a bit more sociable, sort of the timings of Western states than say like, one of these other 100 milers that sort of take you through the night and,
No.
don't offer you a sort of, proper bed in the middle of it. Yeah, it's sort of,
So it's all part of the plan then.
we'll see. I think when the time comes along, and like if the time is right, or rather it'll happen when the time is right. And hopefully it will happen at some point.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great to see you go there. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I other than the spine race, the Western States is my favorite race, and
Even more so than UTMB.
well, I've never been to UTMB. No, I was due to go out last year, and then with everything that happened with my brother, we sort of canned that holiday. We'd planned to go out and drive down there and camp and everything. But then we sort of shelved that with everything that happened. So yeah, so I actually had a place in the and I can't keep forget the name of the race. Is it the MCC, which is the media race that you can get in?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
it's like locals and media types. Yeah, I'd actually got a place on that, and I just had to give it up. So I was a bit gutted about that because we sort of planned the whole year around going there. So I will go back. It won't be this year because we haven't even sort of planned what we're doing. I've literally just brought a house, the house we've lived in for like 14 years. So basically, any idea of going anywhere nice this year has gone out of the window because of solicitors and mortgage fees. So
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
little savings I had have gone. So yeah, so that's so at the minute I've got a place on one of the summer spine races on the Challenger South.
Hmm.
Um, so that'll probably be my focus for the year doing that.
Oh,
Yeah.
super cool. Nice.
And then I'm not really sure what I'm doing for the rest of the year after that. Don't know. Yeah, but UTMB is, yeah, I know that I need to go out there, but I also know that it will sort of ignite something that probably have to do every single summer, and the family will be like, we're not going again.
Yeah, yeah. Somehow be the what is it? The more exciting version of like my family sort of Sunday trips orienteering. You're dragging your family out to sort of Chamonix, and they're just like, goodness, no, not again. No more
Yeah.
cucumber sandwiches. We're
Oh no, they're I've got two teenage daughters that are yeah, they're past cucumber sandwiches now. They're quite demanding. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Luke, and I'm so glad that we actually, finally got it in the books and recorded it. So I appreciate. I knew it would be a good one, and I knew you've got like a hell of a story that I know we haven't really like even sort of, gone into it in full depth. But I don't think either of us would be able to cope with it if we went into into too much detail anyway. We'd end up like
yeah,
blubbering messes. So
yeah, yeah. I could see you, and like, yeah, it's never far away. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe it's best that we didn't go into too much detail, but who knows if we could have a proper like full on like therapy session together at a
yeah,
future
yeah.
time.
Yeah, at some point you'll end up being a home trails episode anyway. So and then we'll end up doing that. So we'll give you the full documentary treatment and you can go into as much detail on that
Yeah.
as you like, and we'll get everybody crying. So, but I appreciate you coming on, mate, and having a chat. And I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on the rest of this year. And you know, obviously Chianti was just a trip in the road for you this year, and looking forward to seeing you do really well at some big races.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I think also thanks for giving the time to sort of talk about the races that don't go well, because we said it off air beforehand, but like I think all too often the only races that we kind of people think are worth attention are the success stories, which makes perfect sense. But like as I've said, like, I'm not a superhuman. I also don't finish my races. Um and actually that's okay in my mind, like as I've got some big learning points. Um and I took a gamble. It didn't pay off, but as long as you keep going back,
Yeah,
you don't lose.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can't all be Lucy Gossage.
We can't all be Lucy. No. Lucy, you're listening to this. You already know. You already know. I'm so impressed, but you can have it live on air. Live on air.
Yeah,
Everyone, check out Lucy. She's awesome.
so there's an advert for Lucy's episode. So I'm filming with her when she gets back from. Is she in Tenerife at the minute or Mallorca? Yeah, she's out cycling, isn't she, somewhere? So when she gets back, we've got it booked in to do a home trails episode, like a proper run around her trails and a sit down chat with her. So, and I've mentioned it twice on the podcast now, so she can't get out of it. So it's taken me all this time since January to get her booked in. I was trying to get an interview with her last year, um, and I gave up because I don't like to pester people too much for interviews. Um, but yeah, she kind of gave me the cold shoulder for a little bit, but then she apologized and said that she wasn't ignoring me. She just had a lot on. It's fair enough. But yeah, cheers for coming on, mate. I appreciate you giving up a bit of your time, and I'm glad we got it recorded finally.
Yeah. Well, no, thanks so much for the opportunity, Sam. Really
No
appreciate
worries,
it.
mate. Cheers, mate. Thanks for listening, everyone. Cheers. Bye, 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 bye.